So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview, recorded live on blogtalkradio.com on June 11, 2008. If MTV edited a presidential campaign video, it would probably look and feel a bit like In Search of Kennedy, a new documentary film by Chuck Workman and Stephen Kern. The movie applies a 21st century shine to the most iconic of 20th century political figures, John F. Kennedy. It is incredibly au courant, with the 2008 Democratic references narrowed down to Obama and Clinton. And I suspect that by the time the documentary debuts at the Seattle Film Festival this weekend, it might be tweaked to be even more contemporary. Whether you're a Kennedy fan or just a political junkie, I think you'll find In Search of Kennedy provocative and entertaining. Stephen Kern, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely review.
Well, it's a very interesting film, and I want to add that we're expecting your partner Chuck Workman anytime. He had something going on, and we're just looking for him whenever he can get on the phone and join us.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse him. I think it was his granddaughter's. She was at granddaughter's commencement or something. So you'll forgive him, but he should be with us very shortly.
That'll be fine. We'll keep an eye on the phone for him. It's funny. The film is called In Search of Kennedy, but I was thinking that after almost 8 years of George W. Bush, I'm kind of surprised you didn't call the film In Search of Damn Near Anybody Else.
Well, we started out, to be honest, Bob, about 3.5 years ago. I was the catalyst for this. I was quite a young man when JFK was assassinated, but was quite enamored with him, to put it mildly, and wanted basically to do a film. I have a documentary background, having been involved in a couple of other documentaries, one with Chuck Workman, and basically wanted to do something about JFK because I felt that, and this was 2004, that he wasn't getting the respect that he deserved. I felt that particularly anyone under the age of 30 probably thought of him strictly as a president who was assassinated or was, fooling around with Marilyn Monroe. But there was much greater depth. And the major thing I wanted to come out with it was the inspiration that he inspired in so many of us. The lack of the lack of cynicism, the hope, and which quite miraculously has obviously been presented now with Barack Obama, which of course we never figured on 3.5 years ago.
Right. I can see that as motivating you entirely. And I want to point out that I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe Chuck Workman is on the line with us now too.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Hey, Chuck. You missed about 30 seconds. I'd go back and give you the Evelyn Wood version of my wonderful introduction, but you can catch it on the replay later.
Oh, thank you. Thanks in advance. I assume it was okay.
Chuck, he did a lovely job in reviewing the film. You'll be proud.
Great.
There you go. We're delighted to have you with us. I guess, and I'm thinking that, I would have thought that John F. Kennedy is never really very far from the public conscience. It seems like you can barely pick up a newspaper or read a magazine or watch television anytime, whether it's this year's presidential campaign or some other time, that he's not being mentioned relative to something going on.
Well, you're very prescient because that's almost the exact wordage that Ben Bradley uses in the film with regard to that. So you happen to be very correct. And whether it's JFK or now Bobby, with the 40th anniversary commemorative, one way or the other, they're always in the air.
Well, and let me ask you, Chuck, to bring you in here. We've got the 40th anniversary of RFK, the shooting, the assassination, but also just within a week or two before that, the announcement of Teddy Kennedy's brain tumor. This family never leaves the headlines, does it?
No, and I think that we're so used to it that we underestimate that. It's as if we forgot Frank Sinatra, or and yet we never forget Frank Sinatra. We never forget, Franklin Roosevelt. There are certain personalities that just never go away, that are part of our lifetime. And this John Kennedy, I think more than any of the others, even though Bobby is so much of a hero now, and Ted became a hero, it just permeates that. I mean, it's just immensely present within us all the time. And I think that he struck something. The fact that he was killed, of course, had a lot to do with it. But the idea is that we could go around, that I could go around and interview people, and oh yeah, of course they had great things to say about Kennedy, and rarely did they have anything negative to say. Even people that were, younger than John, and younger than anybody that would have remembered him. It was just an absolute phenomenon that we just so take for granted. We take, Joe DiMaggio for granted, or Mickey Mantle, and these presences are not only with us, but they influence everyone in their field, so that every politician since Kennedy has been influenced by Kennedy, including probably Richard Nixon, who looked at Kennedy and said, "Oh, that guy knows how to win. I got to figure that out." And it's just part of the kind of the gestalt of American life and American politics.
Go ahead.
I would add a couple of things. One, Arthur Schlesinger Jr., the late individual, along with probably Teddy Sorensen, was the keeper of the Kennedy myth and legacy, said that, there are cycles to history. And he appears to be peaking at this point because, and I think we mentioned in the film, among all presidents in polls, he's third behind just Lincoln and Roosevelt, which, given that he was in office only 1,000 days, is quite extraordinary to see. But he is an extraordinary figure. And the other thing is also mentioned in the film. Chris Matthews stated that a lot of people feeling the 9/11 being the event of their lifetime. I think and I'll admit it, those of us over 60, it was the JFK assassination, and we have really never gotten over it. And the ripples of the effect of that we're feeling today.
Well, when you guys say that we take these people for granted, I actually was thinking of a slightly different explanation, and that is that in the last 50 years, 40 years, 50 years, because of the predominance of mass media, we just have so many more people to think of and have been made aware of than the generation that went through World War II even. And I always think that that's part of it. Yeah, we need to be reminded of a Kennedy, or in music, John Lennon periodically, because several generations passed. But part of it is that there's been so many more people who've been impressed upon us as being important or having something to say or impacting our lives. I wonder if that's as much of an explanation as someone being
Well, I think though, then you turn around and you look at Kennedy, and he sort of dwarfs everyone that's followed in many ways. I mean, Bill Clinton was nowhere near the stature of Kennedy, and even though he aspired to that, and Barack Obama has the moves, but I don't know if he's going to be, as we say in the film, we hope he is, but we don't know what he's going to do. So I think that there's just never, there are a lot of people, but they haven't measured up, and just like there are a lot of rock stars, but they, John Lennon is a terrific example, and the Beatles, they're still playing the Beatles, there's still Beatles channels, and I'm not a person who says, oh, let's go back to the 60s when everything was perfect and everything has gone downhill since then. I don't believe that. Things have exploded in a wonderful way. I mean, we're talking now on the internet, which is something that no one imagined even a few years ago. So things move and we must move with them. But that's more or less the premise of the film, that even in this whirlpool of this media in the present, of the new media and of the way we communicate now, this presence is still there in such a strong way. And we have to allow it to let that influence us and not get carried away to some extent.
Which is the better connection to Kennedy? Is it Bill Clinton producing a photo of him shaking hands with JFK, or is it Barack Obama getting the endorsement of JFK's daughter and brother?
Well, he didn't get the endorsement of the whole family. I mean, there were parts of the family that we interviewed actually that were still on the Hillary side. So that became political. In fact, in the film we show them both, and then we cut to a shot of JFK just sort of there smiling in the middle of a political thing. Like this is still going on, and no matter what. I think that Clinton, was inspired by Kennedy to become a president. He wanted to become a Kennedy, and what's interesting, I find, is that I don't think John F. Kennedy thought about being president when he was 25 years old, but I think that both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama thought about it and have acted accordingly. And look at John F. Kennedy as a model of kind of character and strength and standing up for things that and they don't always achieve it, but it became the model. So I guess Barack Obama is closer than Clinton because Clinton was not able to achieve things whereas Kennedy would just step in and get help with Bobby's help and who knows who else's help and get a lot done even in those 3.5 years.
Bob, if you in the film, as you'll probably remember, one of the more astounding things was that even in the year 2000, there was a commercial that was done, and for Bush, and part of it was to demonstrate that he was the one who was going to be keeping Kennedy legacy. Yeah, one of the extraordinary. So, and today, all of them, both on the Democratic and Republican side, and you'll see in the political section of our film, all of them are very eager, very, very eager to pick up the JFK mantle and bask in his light.
Well, not only that, I mean, I found it kind of hysterical that this year, not only do they want to make the Kennedy connection, but everybody's eager to show how similar they are to Ronald Reagan. I mean, can you be more different than those two?
No, but Reagan is like the Kennedy for the Republicans, I guess.
Yeah.
Although a lot of the Republicans, when we shot at the Reagan Library, we shot at the debates there, and we shot at other Republican venues, and they love to claim that JFK would have been a Republican. In 1960, that he was a Democrat, but he would have been. He was really more of a Republican. He was anti-communist. He was for, hands off in government and all the various kind of axioms that the Republicans have, and laid claim to him. And so a lot of the people that I interviewed there would couple him together with Reagan. And Reagan, of course, is the Republican hero, and all the politicians at either both last year and now even want to sort of imply that they have the Reagan kind of mantle.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of it.
If it was 1960 right now, and I looked at Republican beliefs, I could almost see myself as a Republican, but not today's Republican Party. I don't,
No, in that time there was a moderate Republican. In fact, the real Democrat was Adlai Stevenson. And he was the one that Eleanor Roosevelt was pushing at the convention, among others. But JFK had such charisma and had done a lot of important work, as Obama did. This caucus work that Obama did that basically got him the nomination. Kennedy had done that also. So that when he rolled into California in '60 for the convention, he knew he had it sewn up. But the actual liberal progressive Democrat that people were talking about, the anti-Eisenhower guy, was Adlai Stevenson.
Yeah, and one of the major reasons there was JFK's father, who within the party himself was, had made himself persona non grata, and they felt for for many reasons. But going back to one other point, I think Barack Obama had mentioned it about Reagan, which of course pissed off the Clintons a lot, was that he was a transformative figure. I think the same can be said about Kennedy. And going back that far as people remember, you had him following President Eisenhower, a grandfather figure, someone steeped in Cold War politics, and here you had this young president with vigor, and who spoke so well and was definitely, and that I believe is the comparison to Reagan, the changes that that certainly Reagan brought about, and that Kennedy was certainly attempting to do before his assassination.
Mm. I think one of the things that may surprise people about this documentary film is that it isn't just a recitation of JFK's greatest hits. It's it really is warts and all presentation of Jack and all the Kennedys. I mean, I loved the moment where I can't remember. You'll have to tell me. I can't remember if this was a card that had this quote, or if I think it was actually JFK saying it, but he's referring back to his dad, Joe, saying that he said that he only wanted to pay for as many votes as it took. He didn't want to have to pay for a landslide.
Yeah, we don't need a landslide, he said. We just want to pay for the votes that we have.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of end the political section of the film with that quote, and that is that's an often quoted thing that Kennedy said. And the wonderful thing about JFK is those quotes. He also said, another quote in the film we have is where he said, when I entered government, and he's talking about all the problems with Cuba and then communism. He said they never told me all the problems that they had. I wish they had told me, that and how what I was going to look at. He has a lot of kind of self-deprecating quotes that he doesn't mind saying, and I think in today's kind of buttoned-up world, God forbid he would say that, and then it would be all over every blog, if someone said that,
Doc, I think
there's no irony anymore, to some extent, because of this instant communication. It's like when you write an email, you have to be careful how you say it, because there's no gestures of yours that there's no body language that goes with it. The same way, these kind of quotes, you could see the irony in them because you had a chance to step away and breathe. Now, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to do that, and I think that's made for a very much of an uptight political world.
I think the quote you were reaching for had to do with what he stated was he was really lambasting the Eisenhower administration, and he was quoted afterwards. He says, "I was amazed and astounded that things are actually worse than I was portraying
worse than I heard." Yeah.
Yeah. When I got in. So.
Could each of you point out that one of the things that was really interesting here is that so many things flash by. I mean, I referred a second ago to the whole warts and all thing. I mean, everything is here. There's Marilyn Monroe. There's Judith Exner. There's Chappaquiddick. There's William Kennedy Smith. Everything goes by. Can each of you tell me maybe 2 or 3 things that you are most proud of that are in the movie? Something either because how you found it, the way you got it into the movie, or just something that just really, pushes home the point of the movie.
Well, I like, the style of the movie is something that I found. It's not one particular sequence. It's something that I really tried to get. I worked on it, and it was elusive. And for me, just finding the fact that people are in search of Kennedy and holding on to that title and holding on to that subject, and mm-hmm. So we're in search of Kennedy. We're in search of all those scandals. We're in search of a new political figure. We're in search of a myth and the truth of the myth, and we're in search of bringing back, the international flavor of Kennedy. I think all that is part of the things that I think is hopefully will strike people most in the film. A lot of people we did there was a bar in south of Boston in Jamaica Plain, which is an old Irish neighborhood. And mm-hmm. It's an old Irish bar that's owned by some Kennedy fans, and there's all these pictures of all the Kennedys around. And they had a 90th birthday party for JFK last year, and it was just like a dozen people in the bar, and they had a cake, and they sang happy birthday, and they gave out free drinks, and a lot of people liked that sequence, and that was a tough sequence to get. And in fact, we asked them to postpone the birthday party for a week or so until he could shoot it. So it was not exactly on his birthday, but other than that, you could see, how much these people that were, again in their 30s or in their 20s, a lot of them, were so devoted to this myth, and felt it was very important to do that. And so that's a sequence I kind of like. And going back to this kind of bar, it's a real working class bar in Boston. And then on the other side, we did, some very major things with the library, and we were in Berlin and Venezuela, and those things were tough to get as well. I was in Africa on another film, and I turned out the ambassador to Sierra Leone, where I was working, was a Peace Corps person, and talked about Kennedy and talked about the importance of Kennedy, and that Sierra Leone's motto was ask not what you can do for yourself, but ask what you can do for Sierra Leone. And so that kind of around the world stuff, and at the same time this very local stuff, was important, I think, to the film, and gave the film kind of a breadth that it might not have had if it was just a political documentary, even with all the wonderful people we had in it, the Tom Haydens and et cetera, that it just sort of humanized JFK and sort of nailed down what the kind of things we were trying to say.
Was there anyone that you wanted to get in the film or get on film talking about Kennedy that declined?
I don't think so. I've been asked that before, and I don't think there was anybody that. I mean, at first we were worried we weren't going to get the Kennedy family, and then Senator Kennedy gave us a wonderful interview. So, but you had to kind of work through that. There's a lot of guards around Kennedy that very well-meaning people and good people that you kind of pass the test of one to the next to the next to the next. And luckily, even though we weren't doing kind of a love fest of Kennedy, they agreed to do it, and we eventually got to Senator Kennedy. And Norman Mailer was another person who had been there, claims partial for responsibility, because he wrote a wonderful essay in 1960 about Kennedy. Forgetting Kennedy, had wonderful, sexy stories to tell also in the film that were kind of funny. So I was very happy to get him as well. But I can't think of anybody. I mean, we chased a little bit, Mayor Villaraigosa, who kind of was elusive, and but in the end, I don't think it mattered. So there's a few people that we might have been interested in that we might have. There was, for instance, certain stars that might have done something, movie stars that were involved with Kennedy. But I don't think that was necessary. So I'm kind of happy with the people we have.
Bob, just going back to your other point with regards to the outstanding sequences and others in the film, overall for myself, I think what Chuck has been able to do, I really truly believe is unique, because when I was the catalyst for the film, and he said, well, the Kennedy myth and legacy is there, but we certainly don't want to do, fairly typical historical biography. So what he attempted to do, which was his idea, and I think he did so brilliantly, was to make the relevancy of the Kennedy myth today, and to basically, utilize all of that as a prism to be looking at where we are today. I've probably reviewed every political biography, and some of them have been brilliant, but they haven't been attempt to use it in this particular context. And Chuck reached for it, and I think pulled it off very, very well.
Well, there are like three sequences that are you wouldn't expect in a normal documentary. That were tricky to do and may or may not work. I hope they work. They seem to work for most audiences. We did a news piece where we actually recreated the exact look, and I hope of what would have been a news in 1968, In other words,
I wanted to ask you about this because go ahead.
Anyway, and we had a newscaster talking about Kennedy's second term, as you would when Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan ended their second term. There would be this kind of boring but interesting kind of news piece about what have they accomplished in their second term and what will happen. And so we did it as if after a more conventional piece where we talked about Vietnam and what with experts, we suddenly go to this news piece, and it says, review of President Kennedy, 1961 to 1969, when Vice President Lyndon Johnson will be taking over. And then it takes a while, I think, to realize what you're watching, and then you kind of get it. And it's an actual news piece of all his accomplishments, and that he had to work hard for civil rights, but he got them through, and he left Vietnam, and everybody's mad at him about that, and his brother was killed, and so all the things that might have happened in those, and we had some experts that helped us out on what might have happened, and so that was kind of an interesting piece because it looked like a piece of news, I hope, we also did a piece that I didn't use where when he was shot, we did like when he died, which was we supposed in 1977 he died of his various ailments, and we had the same announcer but with a different look, and it was in color this time, and but I ended up not putting that in.
I thought I don't want you guys to hang up on me here, but there were two things in the movie that kind of stuck out at me. One was that it was like I'm watching it and I'm like, what the
right.
It was just very odd, and I thought just for what it's worth, I mean, I thought it would make a great bonus piece to a DVD release, but it just really threw me off watching it. I understood what you were getting at, and then the other thing was there's no narrator to the film. However, although it is ironic that I was going to say there's no narrator, but to like Michael Moore to show up to tell us how to think, but then Michael Moore shows up to tell us how to think, which is kind of funny. But the other thing was Alec Baldwin shows up twice. I think both times to read from Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s book 1,000 Days. And while I love Alec in everything from Glengarry Glen Ross to even the Shadow movie and 30 Rock, I found it it was a little jarring because it was like if he had been throughout the movie as a narrator or even just reading from Schlesinger, it made sense, but it just seemed odd. I don't know how to.
Well, the structure of the movie will have that, because of the way the movie's structured. Things will bump a little bit, and it's not meant to be a kind of a smooth, an incredibly smooth film. If someone would have said, "Oh, I liked every bit of it. I love the way you got to this. I love the way you got to that," maybe I'm self-destructive, but I would have said, "Well, wait a minute. Then I did something wrong. There should be something that sticks out that that bothers them a little bit." So I'm not going to hang up. I find that's fine, and that all my work has been like that. Where someone says, "Yeah, I liked it a lot, except I didn't like this," and I said, "If you liked it a lot, then maybe that was part of why you liked it a lot. Who knows? So." I just put it out there, and there might be sections that you feel are not needed, and on the other hand, there might be someone else that said, "I like the Alec Baldwin section. I hated the other part where you did it." So you never know. So I just put them out there and hope that they work in a.
Bob, you felt it wasn't integrated within the context of the film? The Alec Baldwin piece and the Elisabeth Peña.
Elisabeth Peña comes in the middle there.
Yeah,
she actually seemed a little. Somehow I felt more like she fit in a little better.
Yeah, because I think that Alec, it jumps out, and you're looking at him. Is he fat? Is he funny? What is he talking about? So you're kind of you have to kind of take it in. And I did another film on the beats, on the counterculture, on the Beat Generation, where I used Johnny Depp, John Turturro, and Dennis Hopper, also doing very much more elaborate than what Alec did. These kind of speaking to the camera things, representing Jack Kerouac and others. And there were people that said, I love the film except for those things. Then there are people that said, I hated the film, but I loved the Johnny Depp. And then people said, I hate Johnny Depp, but I love Johnny Turturro. So you throw it out there, and if it sometimes it lands on the right sensibility, and sometimes it doesn't. I'm glad that most of the rest of the film worked for you.
Yeah, it was interesting, and like I said, it made me laugh when I was thinking, gee, there's no narrator here, there's no Michael Moore, and then hey, look, there's Michael Moore.
Well, Michael Moore actually we chased forever, and he promised me that he would do it, I was at I kind of hosted a lunch for him when he was up for an Oscar, and just when he was there, I said, I'm doing this film on Kennedy. This was 3 years ago, and will you do it? Oh, sure, whatever you want, Chuck. I'll do whatever you want. And then he was so elusive for the next 2 years, and I would curse him out every day. And then he saw me again at the Oscars, and he was, he's in the Oscar mood. He's always in a good mood. So he said, "Oh, and what about that Kennedy interview? You want to do that now?" And I said, "Sure." And it was his idea, not mine. I thought that was gone. And then he came in with these lines that really were the essence of the story, which was that we haven't really come up to somebody like that in 40 years. Even though subsequently he did endorse Obama, but at the time when we did the interview, he hadn't endorsed anyone, and he still would stand by those words.
Also,
chapter.
It's quite interesting to see with Moore. You probably said possibly the most profound thing. In fact, if you go up to our website, you'll see that we quote him. We said, "What have we had since Kennedy? Every politician appears to be a copy of a copy of a copy," which I think sums up pretty nicely where we are, unfortunately, today.
Yeah. I actually wrote that quote down as well when I was taking notes watching the film. Yeah. I mentioned in the introduction, and Chuck, you'll just have to take my word for this. Stephen heard it. I mentioned MTV in the introduction because the style of the documentary is very fast-paced. There's a barrage of images and sound and personalities and establishing statements. I mean, it's anything but dull. But does that insult your take on this if I say that it's kind of like MTV might do a campaign film?
No, I don't think MTV would do it that way. But all my films have been like that, and the films I do work on the Oscars are even like that. I do a lot of the montages on the Oscar show. I don't know if you mentioned that. And when I first did it, I brought this kind of quick cut style to it, and I thought to myself, well, I'm not really trying to play down to the huge mass audience with what I'm doing. I hope that they buy it. And they did buy it. And then I realized that, if these unwashed people in India are getting it, then a smart guy like you will get it, So I wasn't afraid of the style. I think that while we're doing something, while we're talking, while people are listening to me talk right now, they're looking outside, they're looking at the trees, they're watching the soccer game on television, they're multitasking constantly because there are layers of reality that are around us all the time. The way to tell a complex story, I feel, is to show a lot of these things, and you do take them in. And it could be even, to come back to this Baldwin thing, that stopped the film in a way, on purpose, by the way, but it was meant to stop all those images from, careening at you. But the idea is that we do live in that world, and I've been working with that style for years, and it works for me because I try to have a subtext underneath it, so that even though you're seeing a lot of images, they all kind of make sense in a way that you really don't have time to think over. But you say, yeah, it kind of works in your head. And so I kind of really work at which little piece of the image and where it goes and how it goes. And it becomes sort of a mosaic, a composite of what I think the movie is about. And by the way, I can't articulate it, even with this nice conversation that we're having, where I have plenty of time and you can let me yak here. I can't really articulate the ideas as well as I think I can show them on the film. I think that on the film you might get a richer experience out of just where Kennedy is today, and in your mind and in the mind of others, than for all the talking and all the books that one could that I could write or think about. I think that the style is part of the message in that film.
Is there a point of view that you're trying to get across in this film, or are you trying to just present us a picture or something? Because I ask that because I didn't get a strong sense of being lectured or being told how to think, which is what made me think of Michael Moore.
I think that's the essence of the film is, for all due respect, and for Michael Moore, and the type of films that he does, and he reaches an audience, and we have a lot to be grateful for in Michael Moore and setting the documentary format, into the stratosphere where it is today. But I think you're left to. He's never condescending, Chuck. He allows the viewer to basically take all of this in, and then I think a lot of people will come out of that who will want to, or Obama fans saying, well, he's our man. Obama is the legacy. And then there were others who within that, because we dealt with Hillary, and Hillary supporters who can make the same claim.
And then also we tried to show some negatives. I mean, we certainly showed every possible scandal in spades.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But had fun with it more. And so many people said afterwards, from Jesse Jackson on, that it doesn't matter. I mean, Arianna Huffington, all these people that probably had their own scandals. Let's get on with the substance. And so we tried to show everything. And then there were people that politically that were scholars that would have some negative things to say. I think it's pretty obvious that both Steve and I feel that Kennedy was an incredibly important person and that we could use right now, and that sort of became the mantra of the film. But I think it's an insult to people's intelligence to just lay that on them, and also they would get bored after 10 minutes of watching it. So the idea is to show all these kind of sides and build the case within your 90 minutes.
I think it's an extraordinary fair, insight into the man, good, bad, never indifferent. And I think, as I said, people will come out of that and see what they want with it, which makes it, I think, a much more illuminating film by virtue of that.
I think I neglected when I started to point out who did what. My understanding, Stephen, that you were the producer, and Chuck, you're the director on the film. Is that correct?
Well, I'm also the producer, but
you are, okay.
Yeah, Steve was the one that really came in with the project and was a collaborator all the way through. A lot of these things your questions are asking are things that we would be sitting in a dark room and looking at a monitor, saying, do we have enough anti-Kennedy in this? That were just general practical things that we would discuss in terms of trying to make a better movie out of it. And so Steve was probably the only other person in those rooms. I mean, and so that as a producer, he was able to kind of, we were both kind of mostly usually on the same page, and then of course, Steve made it possible financially for the film and from the business side. And
I would say that Steve wrote the checks and Chuck made the film.
Okay.
That's good. That was my major contribution, but he's being very kind. But it's his film, and I think.
Well, Steve, if you're good at writing checks, have I got it? Never mind. No. So you guys worked together on Superstar, the Life and Times of Andy Warhol, and then Chuck, you did The Source, which was about Jack Kerouac and the Beat Generation.
Right.
Were there similarities in the projects and the subjects, and did the work on Warhol and The Source, did that open like adjacent doors for the Kennedy project?
Well, actually it did. I didn't notice it until Steve or someone pointed it out that, you've made 3 films about icons of the 60s and how they've, set things up. I think it did. It allowed me to kind of look at, from a technical side, just look at the documentary form as to how, you can kind of, get across your points that way and work within that form. But also, the story. I mean, the danger is getting very nostalgic about the 60s and the late 60s. And even HBO has an Oscar contender with a film about Roman Polanski, where most of it is what happened in 1969, basically, in the early 70s. But so much did happen in those days that changed our ways today that it's kind of interesting to look back at that. So I think that did help me, and certainly the style and the use of music, and there's a lot of different kinds of music in this film, and the quick cut style, as you said, and all sort of came out of these earlier films.
So what is the path? What is the film's path from here? Festivals until you find a distributor, or how's that going to work from this point?
Yeah, well, we're premiering the film on Friday at the Seattle International Film Festival, and we have we've engaged a firm out of New York who are representing us, and they will be at there's a Silver Docks, which is a major festival, and we won't be presenting there, but they'll be very much in attendance. And we're looking for, hopefully, for a theatrical distribution of the film. We think it's very topical, very appropriate, and certainly before the November election.
We always aim to get the film exposed before the election. So that because at one point someone said, "Oh, this is the film you should see before you vote," just to get a feeling for what could be and what could be expected of the new candidates. So the idea would be to get it out into the public, But the vagaries of independent film distribution and documentaries, especially, is quite something, and especially today, it goes up, it goes down, and one never knows. So the best thing to do is you make your movie, and you try and make it honestly, and put it out there in a professional way, and hope for the best. So we're going to hope for the best. I mean, we know the film has got some value. We were already getting some interesting reviews on it, where they're kind of seeing the things, and they point out different other scenes that they don't like, but they also like 95% of it, so it's okay.
I saw during the film, one thing caught my eye that maybe someone else might not react to, but there was a sign for MediaMatters.org, and that resonated with me because I had another documentary filmmaker on 2 weeks ago, Katie Shavini. I don't know if you've seen her film Election Day.
No.
It was filmed during the 2004 election. I think they had 11 or 12 film teams out all over the country documenting.
I was involved with that film, but I didn't know whatever happened to it. No, I was into our 2006 election. I was doing the congressional film. I was an advisor on a film about the congressional election in 2006. No, I haven't seen that film. I've heard of it though, we shot at a kind of a progressive conference in Washington, where it's toward the end of the film, where a lot of very really young people, 19, 20, 21, smart people, were there as representatives of their college or a little older, or and they had just amazing things to say, and among them being there hasn't been an authentic figure since Kennedy, and so that these people that are in these more now in Media Matters and those sort of organizations are also in search of a Kennedy, or in search of Kennedy in their way. If you would have asked this filmmaker about Kennedy, she would have said, "Oh, of course, Kennedy's important." So it's just that they don't even think of it. They just they assume that that's part of their body is in a way.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, my major reason for presenting it to Chuck and wanting to do something was to bring out to a younger audience what he had meant to us at the same age that they are now. Again, this is 3.5 years ago, and it's interesting. It appears with the youth of America has felt this about Barack Obama. Seems to be recreated once again. A lot of that electricity and faith and hope, etc., which is wonderful. And when one would hope that this younger audience would want to see, in this particular film, what we felt 40, almost 45 years ago, and to see what if if it resonates in a younger audience.
Now, before we wrap up, I don't expect either of you guys to say it, but I imagine that Hillary Clinton's, well, let's call it an offhand remark a couple weeks ago about that she was staying in the race at that time because, after what happened with Bob B. Kennedy, getting assassinated, you never know what's going to happen. And that also, even Teddy Kennedy's illness isn't bad timing or bad publicity for your project.
Well, I teach a course in documentary making sometime. I say that the best thing that could happen is if your subject gets assassinated at the end of or shot or dies or gets, arrested or that it gives you an end to your film. I mean, it's a very, I say it as a joke of, you don't want anybody to get killed or die, but it does happen. And the most famous example being the Harvey Milk. There was a famous film about Harvey Milk, that started out as, let's make a film about a gay councilman in San Francisco, and then Harvey Milk, of course, was shot and killed, and that became the end of the film. And so it does close your film out. What you don't want to certainly, hope for that, and you don't want anything to happen. And certainly no one wants, anything. Teddy is such a wonderful figure. No one, hopes him to be sick. I think the fact that we were so interested in the fact that he did get sick was that these Kennedys are just such a huge thing, and here's one more. There's no question when you work with the Kennedys that Senator Kennedy is the head of the family. I mean, you just get that feeling. They always want to. A lot of them ask me, "Did Senator Kennedy does Ted know about this?" And I said, "Yes, he does," and he kind of approved it. He didn't say no. He said, "Go for it," so. That's just part of history. I think that just shows the importance of these people. Frankly, I don't think, I think Hillary is an interesting person, but I don't think that she quite meant it the same way.
No, she didn't. But we had a gentleman who was advising us who saw an early screening and felt very strongly about the film, particularly the evergreen value of it beyond the election. And one of the things that we kept going back and forth about was you didn't want to make it where it was so tied in to this particular election that by November 4 or 5, the day after the election, your film, for all intents and purposes, its value was greatly diminished. And I think that will not be the case with this film. It's as topical. It should be seen before the election, but I think hopefully for years to come, it'll be something that will be an important figure, important film, in the political realm.
Well, guys, I really want to thank you so much for both of you coming on the show and talking about the film. I agree. I think this is something that a lot of people will want to see and probably should see before the election, after the election, for a long time to come.
Well, thank you, Bob.
They could go to the bathroom during the Alec Baldwin section if they want.
Well, you got to have a time. There's got to be a moment to. And look, the thing is, just so we're clear, he does it very well. It just stuck out at me at where it was.
Well, the famous story, the Sgt. Pepper album, to go back to the 60s again, is that they said, well, I know we loved all those Ringo songs, but why did you put that Day in the Life thing at the end of it?
Yeah.
That kind of was different, And so, it's kind of, it's interesting. And it's always interesting to me to hear, that, I thank you for those comments. They're kind of helpful to me, actually.
My pleasure. Always happy to run down somebody's work,
We appreciate all of it, good or bad, Bob.
Yeah, no, I really did enjoy watching it, and I'm planning to plant my daughter in front of it in the next couple of days. So, but again, thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bob. That's very nice.
Thank
very
you.
nice. It's interesting.
Good luck in Seattle.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, you can learn more about Chuck Workman and Stephen Kern's new documentary, In Search of Kennedy, by visiting their website, which is www.insearchofkennedy.com. All solid, insearchofkennedy.com. And you can order their earlier films, such as Superstar, The Life and Times of Andy Warhol, and The Source on MrMedia.com and Amazon.com. For dozens more celebrity and media newsmaker interviews, surf over to the main website, www.mrmedia.com, where you can listen to my earlier conversations with the stars, creators, and producers of Army Wives, 24, The Big Bang Theory, Pearls Before Swine, Tell Me You Love Me, The Dark Knight, Penn and Teller, and many others. And please think about writing an online review of Mr. Media or marking Mr. Media as one of your favorites, whether you listen on blogtalkradio.com, Blueberry, Zencast, Odeo, Digital Journal, or iTunes. Folks, thanks so much for joining me today here on Mr. Media. I really appreciate it when you take time out of your schedule to do that. Bye-bye.